Hello and welcome to Answering the Call, Maine's Veterans Voices. I'm Angus King, U.S. Senator from Maine, and on this program, we interview Maine veterans about their experiences to record an oral history of their experiences, both in the service, but also in veteran status when they go back to civilian life. Our guest today is Ed Stanhope, who served two tours in Vietnam in the Army, got out of the Army, came back to the States, and then joined the National Guard. He was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam and remained so in the National Guard for many years. So, Ed, welcome to the program. And let's get started with way before the military. Start me out in Lisbon, Maine, and your boyhood and growing up.
Well, I started out, that I remember, in Lisbon, Maine at my grandparents' farm. My mother brought us back from Boston, where we were born, and went back to nursing school and helped support the family and supported the family for the rest of my growing up. So I had grandparents and neighbors like we had in those days, and we all looked out for each other. So I was blessed.
And it was Lisbon, Maine, not Lisbon Falls. We want to be
Oh
clear.
gosh, no. When my mother was growing up, they each had their high school and they were arch rivals.
I get that. Now, what took you into the military? You went through high school in Lisbon. What next?
Well, my brother was a operating room tech in Germany, and he said the best rank in the Army was a warrant officer, and the best warrant officer was a pilot because they got to wear cool gray pajamas, which is what he called our flight suits. And he told me he'd taken the test, so he told me about the test. So when we was trying to do test taking, that gave me a leg up, and the Army was looking for helicopter pilots in '65, and I was lucky enough to become one.
Did you have any flying experience whatsoever before you joined the service?
I saw it on TV in black and white, of course.
And then, okay, so where did you have basic training?
Basic was at Fort Polk, Louisiana, in December and January, and the coldest I'd been in my life because it was 100% humidity, stream of ice on the roadside ditches in the morning, and then it would warm up till just the other side of melting that for the afternoon.
So now, wait a minute. You said it was cold in Louisiana?
No, I felt cold because it was 100% humidity and right around freezing.
Ah, I get it. Yeah, it felt colder than it feels up here.
Sure, because we have a nice cold up here.
Now, okay, so you're in basic training, which and is that pilot training? Is that where you
No,
learn?
but they sent us all there because it was Fort Polk, Louisiana, and they wanted us to appreciate the closer to the climate we were all going to be destined to.
Oh, I see. Okay. And then tell me about how long does it take to learn to fly a helicopter? Is flying a helicopter harder or easier than flying a fixed wing aircraft?
Well, according to my instructors, who were retired senior, very senior Air Force pilots, they said it was much more difficult.
Yeah, I would think it seems like it. Now, what were you trained on? What was the uh, aircraft? What was the helicopter? Huey?
Two or three different versions, and I flew the TH-55, which is a small, huge, specifically as a little two-seat training helicopter. It's a very nice little machine.
Okay. The helicopters we used to have up here in the National Guard in Maine that I used to fly in when I was governor were Blackhawks.
Oh, yeah.
But
So when I first came back to Maine after Vietnam, we had some of the little Korean War vintage helicopters, and then we started getting Marine Corps surplus H-34s, a big, tall, ugly helicopter, and then we got Hueys after that, and the rest of my career was flying Hueys.
well, my recollection, my most vivid recollection of the Blackhawk was during the ice storm in '98 when remember when we lost all the electric lines and
Oh, sure.
blew across the state. And the other memory I have was that the heater wasn't very good. The thing was very cold as we were looking down on where the damage was to the ice storm.
Yeah, the heaters on those lacked a lot. So
Yeah, lack a lot. That's the way I would put it. Well, okay, so you have basic training, you learn to fly a helicopter, and you go to Vietnam. What was your duty there? What were you flying there, and what was what was the work that you were doing with the helicopters?
my first year and tour was flying Huey helicopters, the ubiquitous, uh, the bigger version that was a utility helicopter. We hauled whatever needed hauling, uh, from ammunition, troops, moved villages, pigs, rice, grain, chicken, and we moved in villages. Whatever needed hauling, you could fit inside about the size of a Volkswagen minibus, a little bit bigger.
So you were hauling equipment, not people. Is
Oh
that
no,
right?
everything. We hauled everything that needed hauling. We fit ammunition, people, food. You name it, if we fit in, we hauled it.
What would be a typical mission? How long? How far away? How dangerous?
Uh, Most of my time we were supporting other units, so we'd go out and we'd fill in, running supplies back and forth, people, specialized equipment, radios, batteries, whatever they needed. In my unit, occasionally, if they'd have combat assaults, then we'd form up with a bunch of other helicopters and haul troops into an area that we all had fingers crossed that we hoped was quiet. And the reason they were going there is because it was a bad area. So it was sometimes quiet and sometimes not.
So did you come under fire occasionally?
Oh, yeah. And I had amazingly good luck.
Was the underside of the helicopter armored in any way?
No, we had armored seats, and the crew would sit we had vests with an armored plate that we could lace into the front of our shoulder harness. And the crew had those that they could wear, and some would choose to sit on them. And then they had flak vests, which were good for flak and not good for stopping bullets. So eventually, wiser heads prevailed, and all of us wore the ceramic armor plate.
So when you went out on a mission, you never knew what you were going to encounter.
No, you look at the map and say, "Oh, not there again," and you say, "Well, this would be fun," and you never knew until you got there.
One of my colleagues in the Senate is Tammy Duckworth. She's a senator
Oh,
from Illinois, and
I,
she was a helicopter pilot in Iraq and had a terrible her a guy fired a rocket propelled grenade and it went up through the windshield and blew up the helicopter. She lost both her legs and miraculously somehow got the helicopter to the ground, uh, and she's now in a wheelchair, of course, and a very effective U.S. senator. And I was with her. I went back to Iraq a couple of years ago with her, and we took a helicopter from Baghdad up to Tajik, and the pilot flew over the spot where she had been shot down, and it was quite a moment, as you can imagine, with her sitting with her and looking out the open end of the helicopter and seeing the spot where that terrible accident occurred. She's a remarkable person.
yeah, that must have been an amazing journey.
It really was, and I snapped a picture of her, and which I think she has now, and it was quite something to be with her at that moment. So you would go out on these missions, and you were how long was your first tour? How long were you in Vietnam?
For a year, the army did 1 year tours, so
And then you
essentially
came
all.
back, and did you come back and do more training, or how long were you
Well, I
back in
came
the
back and
States?
went to Georgia, and we did we did training of that kind of missions there. Through various people, mostly training us, but we when people need to be hauled, we flew parachutists, the top staff, and we'd like to jump out of our helicopters instead of the big airplanes. And
Did you ever train to fly a fixed wing, or was it always just helicopters?
no, always helicopters.
Okay. So you're back home. How long were you back before you returned?
Well, I was in '68 in Georgia. Things were happening, and the rumor was that the unit I was with was getting ready to go to Korea, because in '68 Korea was heating up. And well, we're going to take the whole unit and go to Korea. We're going to take the whole unit and go into Vietnam. And I'd seen units that had come in mass, and it was not going to be a fun project. So being smart, I thought, I said, well, what else you got for me? And he said, you can fly helicopters Chinook and go back to Vietnam. And I said, well, I'd rather go back to Vietnam in a Chinook than a Huey, because I've done that, and it was times when it was less fun. And the Chinook was a nice big challenge, and I thought that it was much more secure, being slightly older and slightly wider.
But so you had another year. You had a second tour.
Right.
You talked about the protection, but you must have lost friends in those
There
2
were
years.
4 of us that went to flight school together. Took the bus down to Fort Polk, Louisiana, and Jimmy Godfrey was the second of the 4 that was killed. He was a friend from Lisbon. Well, his dad was a minister in Green, and we were in an area Baptist youth group. And he and his sister and I were friends, and we went over together. And then the other one that was killed, actually killed first of our class, was the Navy patrol bomber Tucci, the T-2 Neptune, we call him the gate guard, the one that's the Navy Brunswick. He was a crew member on that, and he passed the test to go to Army flight school, so they let him out early on his Navy obligation. Good luck, sir. And off he went, because he wanted to be up front and in charge. And he was the first of our 4 that was killed. So now that leaves 2. And the third, I had heard was killed. Grapevine was pretty good, sadly about 30 years, but he was shot down, very badly injured. He stayed at 20 years and was on and off flight status for the whole 20 years. And sadly, I've forgotten his name long since. And then there was me, who was amazingly lucky.
Yeah, you must wonder why them, not you. How there's no rhyme or reason to it.
Well, I'm just thankful that I survived and went on and did other things, and I try to live every day like I deserve it.
Now, when you came back, of course, there's a lot of comment, thought, conversation about the fact that the people coming back from Vietnam didn't get the proper welcome that they should have. Did you feel that way when you came back to the States, that people weren't as appreciative of what you had done and sacrificed as would have normally otherwise been the case of someone returning from a war? Were you aware of that
Well, there was a lot of talk of it, but actually I came back and went to the University of Maine in Orono, and we're kind of a live and let live group for the most part, and I avoided places where there might be issues, and I joined the National Guard in Maine, and so I hung out with like individuals and just a fabulous bunch of people, and so it didn't matter.
Did you? So as after your second tour, you left the Army and came back to Maine. Is that right?
That's correct. And then I talked to the National Guard, who was moving to Bangor at the time. They'd been out of Augusta between tours when I was stopped in and visited in '68. And they said, well, bring all your paperwork with you and we'll process you right in. So I get to Seattle and processing out of the Army, and I said, I need you to have this because I'm going right to the Maine National Guard. Oh, no, this is the Army. We're not letting go of your paperwork. We'll send it to the records holding place in St. Louis, and don't worry, you'll have it as soon as they ask for it. Well, that was November, and it was April before they could hunt down my paperwork, and I joined. Other than that, I was
Welcome to
in,
the Army Paperwork Division,
oh,
right?
yeah, so I was in for the next 36 years. I was lucky enough to finish my 40 years of service a few weeks before I turned 60, and they did turn me out the back.
Now, were you active duty with the National Guard all that time?
No, I was they called them M days, part-timers. My wife called me a guard bum because when they had fun missions or interesting missions, and they call Ed Stanhope, and Ed Stanhope could go and do fun and interesting things.
And so, where was your base? Were you based in Bangor at
We
that
were
time?
at Bangor, but when I talked about the big ugly helicopter that we got from the Marines, and we were packed, my crew and I were packed at the base lodge at Bigelow for the World Cup ski race from either 72 or 73.
Oh, you were there to do medevac.
Yeah, how cool was that?
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Well, and the good news was that nobody got seriously enough hurt for us to go pick them up on the mountain. And the one guy that they did transfer, they did it by ground ambulance. He had a pretty bad femur, and they figured it was smoother by ground ambulance than that big ugly helicopter packed out front. It was
Well,
probably a wise choice.
of course, now we have Life Flight in Maine, which we didn't have then, and they do a hell of a job across the state.
And Life Flight, when they got the contract, a friend of mine was flying for them in Buffalo, and he called up all excited and said, "You know, we got the contract." And I said, "Well, I've been following this, and it's one of the top 3 companies doing that in the whole world, and how pleased I was to hear it." And he said, "Do you want to come fly for us?" And I said, "One pilot, one medic, one nurse. I have a crew of 2 pilots and a nurse, or mostly flight medic, and doctor or something if necessary, and the crew chief. And we're now flying with night vision goggles, which is an amazing invention that made really scary things and dangerous things and sadly deadly things flying around in the night much more safe." And I say, "No, thank you." But now they're doing all of the good stuff, and Life Flight has done a bunch of amazing and innovative things, and they've done a bunch of it, and was blessed to have them, and I had a good time along the way and did some missions.
Well, talk to me about your experience with being a veteran in Maine and working with Togus and the VA.
Well,
Has that
that
been a
was one of
good experience?
when in the time between when I got off active duty and when I got into the Guard, they said, "Well, you need to have a flight physical, and we don't do that at the time, so we'll send you to Navy Brunswick." So I get down to Navy Brunswick, and they welcome me down, and gave me the physical, and they found something in my blood that said we've got a problem. And they said, "You just gotten off active duty, so we'll get you into Togus." So I show up at Togus, and I'm one of the first Vietnam veterans to show up there for testing. And the doctor working on me lived in one of the little houses. He came into Togus from the Gardner Gate.
Yep.
And he said, "I love this." He said, my wife sadly has passed. I closed up my private practice on Fifth Avenue in New York. My daughter's a student at Rhode Island School of Design, and so I can practice medicine here and walk to work. And I love it because I can do the best medicine I know how, and I don't have to worry about routine, which you couldn't do on my office on Fifth Avenue in New York. And
Well, that's
he was
been
explaining all this to me, what he was going to do and look at. He pulls out a medical textbook and beautiful illustrations, and down in the bottom right-hand corner of the illustration was his name. So that was my introduction to Togus.
well. My experience with meeting with veterans all over the state is that they get great care at Togus, and I think what you talked about that doctor, that they're good doctors, but they also have a mission. They love being there to serve veterans.
They have a passion, and the people who are the custodians there have the same passion. And the people that worked on me in the little clinic in Lewiston, of that passing.
My experience with veterans that are at Togus is that the doctors not only are good doctors, but they're on a mission to serve veterans. Was that your experience?
That's definitely been my experience. And everybody that I've dealt with there, from the custodians to the volunteers that welcome you in or give you a shuttle bus ride from the parking lot, we're all there with the same mission. They live the mission. They don't just talk about the mission.
And talk about have you been active in one of the VSOs or in VFW or the Legion or DAV?
Well, I work with DAV, Jerry DeWitt, whose name is synonymous with lots of things veterans in central Maine and throughout the state, was a flight medic to me when we were both much younger. I followed his career, and I do things to him. His other duties as assigned man. He's wearing his DAV hat. And then I work with the American Legion. They have an air rifle program, and I'm a technical advisor for that because marching did stuff for the Army and for myself and for the U.S. and other things I've been involved in. So I do that, and then the Adaptive Sports Airgun program that my wife found out about, doing a volunteer thing for Jerry DeWitt. We set up a program now 12 years ago at Togus, and our host is the Legion Hall just outside of Togus. So we all work together looking out for veterans.
And you're teaching young people responsible firearm use. Is that the airgun program?
That's the youth program, but we say this is a family program. So the families come and they work together. And I tell people that these young people, some as young as 8 and 9 and 10, I take any of those people hunting with me and trust them behind me with a loaded gun before I would some of the old folks that I deal with as we get old and lazy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very good relationship and just great, delightful people that give me hope for the future.
Well, it's great that you're continuing to stay engaged, and you have been through how many years in the Guard? 36 years in the Guard?
Well, 4 active and then 36 in the Guard.
And that now, could you step into a new helicopter today and fly it, you think?
Well, somebody else would have to start it.
Okay. All right. Well, I have an old friend, John Cashwell, up in
Oh
Bangor.
my God. I'm not worthy to carry John's helmet bag.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I say I'm not worthy to carry John's helmet bag.
Oh, come on. You mean that he was that good a pilot?
Good guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. His daughter, this is the way Maine is. His daughter was one of my top aides down in Washington, Morgan Cashwell, and John's been a friend for about 30 years. And he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I understand. Well, I flew with him, I think, a little bit in my younger days, and he was a very good pilot.
Oh.
I'm sure he probably still is.
Well, I don't know about that. I saw him a couple of weeks ago. He's a great guy. I'm going to have to get him on this program and talk about his experience. Well, all in all, it sounds like the training that you got basically stood you in good stead for the rest of your life in terms of learning to fly and having that opportunity. A kid from Lisbon, Maine, wouldn't have otherwise had that chance.
Well, that's true, and um, tracking it, our flight school classes will say we're a couple hundred people, and we had a disproportionate number of people in each class and being successful in each class compared to, like, we had at the time maybe 1 million people, in Chicago had who knows how many million, and they had 1 guy in the class and we had 4. So
You had 4 from Maine?
yeah, the 4 of us from Maine that went together, and I think there were 1 or 2 others that happened to be there as well, and most of the classes per capita, I think, provided more helicopter pilots than big cities.
Well, Maine, I'm not sure the figure, but we're second or third in the country in terms of percentage of veterans in our population. We have almost 10% of our population are veterans, and it's one of the highest in the country.
Well, and I tell people that we're also blessed with the highest, and I think we are the highest percentage of interesting and wonderful groups looking out for us, from VAF, the Pineland Farms operation, doing all kinds of veteran sports and activities, and there are people that make quilts for us, and there are people that do adaptive riding, and you name it, and there's some group in Maine helping veterans and working with veterans. And then we
Well,
network together. I'm with the DAV primarily, and some with the Legion, and we get together and help each other out when somebody needs tired on a pad or gets to somewhere, or a bus ticket, or a motel room, which is now 4 times as much as it was 2 years ago. So we all have to chip in and help people get served. So
well,
we're very blessed with Maine.
I was at the Veterans Expo up down to Pineland a couple of weeks ago, and I think there must have been 300 or 400 people there. It was a huge crowd, and as you say, there was everything from quilts to dogs to all the various programs, financial assistance. It was not only a great expo, but it was the turnout was what really impressed me.
We are truly blessed, and I've worked with your staff and with the other senators' staff and with the congressional staff in the Lewiston area on various veteran issues, and they're always just as nice as they can be and do the very best they can. So we're blessed in Maine in lots of ways.
Well, good. Well, listen, we got to wrap it up, but you can hear my dog barking in the background. I got to go tend to her, but uh, I just want to thank you profoundly for the service that you've given to the country and to Maine, and for your continuing to work with veterans and families in the state. People in Washington sometimes say to me, "What's so special about Maine? Why are you so engaged up there?" And I tell them, because Maine is a big small town where we know each other and we care about each other and we take care of one another. And I think your experience and the fact that you knew John Cashwell, I mean, that indicates just the kind of place it is and why it's so special. Ed, thank you for taking the time. Anything you want to share before we close out?
Well, I did want to say on behalf of my cousin, Tim Wallace, was a younger cousin that spent as much time as Lisbon as he could, and they said, "Oh, you're talking to Senator King." My cousin was Tim Wallace, who was quadriplegic, and these people did lots of things.
Oh, I remember Kim well. He was a wonderful guy.
Oh yeah, and he was my essentially my kid brother. Although we were technically cousins, we grew up together as much as possible. So.
Well, he taught me a lot about what it was like to be disabled, and made me realize that to you and I, 5 or 6 steps up to one building is no big deal, and to him, it may as well have been 100-foot wall. I'll never forget Kim. He was a absolutely great guy. Great guy. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, his sister was talking before I came here last week, and she said, "Oh, be sure to say hi to the senator, because you did lots for Tim, and together you did lots for the country."
Well, thank you, Ed, and thank you for what you've done. And let's keep in touch. And the last thing I'll say is that I do serve on the Veterans Committee and do a lot of work in that area. So if there are things I need to know, things that need fixing, you let Teague know or let me know. And as they say, I know a guy. Maybe I can help.
And thank you and your wonderful staff for looking out for us.
Thank you so much, Ed. Great to talk to you. This is Maine Veterans Voices, answering the call. Stories of veterans in Maine. Today we've been talking about Ed Stanhope, 2 tours in Vietnam, over 30 years in the Maine National Guard, still serving his fellow veterans today, and the kind of person that makes Maine the special place that it is. Thanks again for being with us. Angus King for Maine's Veterans Voices.